So this screencast is a quick introduction to the research paper you're going to be doing in AP Lang over the course of the next couple of weeks. When we started synthesis, you'll remember that I frame the whole thing as it's complicated. We want to look at issues as going sort of beyond the black and white, the yes and no, the polarized, this is true, this isn't true, this is right, this is wrong. And we want to start to see issues as complicated, as more complex than that, because they are. And so our research paper is following the same thing. This is a little bit different from research papers that you've done in the past because it's not a thesis-driven research paper, and that is sort of the number one thing that I want to make sure you understand about this, is it's not a thesis-driven research paper. And in a couple of minutes as I explain this assignment, you'll hopefully understand what that means. So I want you to think of it as a scenario. Consider that someone has asked you what you've been doing and what you've been learning in AP English. You want to tell them about this amazing project that your teacher assigned where she gave you complete freedom to explore an issue of interest of you, which you started by reading a book of your choice. So the person asking you about what you're learning is someone you feel comfortable with. They're dying to hear all about it. So your job is you want to communicate your enthusiasm, but you also want to present yourself as someone who's learned a lot. You want to show off your understanding of the issue and demonstrate how your ability to see complexity has grown over the course of reading your novel and doing some research of it. Your project is that you're going to give this person, whoever this person you have in mind, it doesn't matter, you're going to give them an informational narrative outlining what you did, what you learned, how the sources informed your thinking, and why it matters. So your ultimate product is going to be telling the story of what you've learned and how your thinking has evolved. Now, I told you this is like nothing you've ever done before, so you definitely can be confident that I've got samples for you. I'm going to walk you through this. Don't worry about it. I know that you're kind of baffled at the moment. That's okay. Number one, sort of big asterisk point here is that there is no given page range or word count here. Your instructions are to do what makes sense to complete the assignment thoroughly, but don't go overboard. And you want to be obviously concise in your writing. This worked out really well last year. Students are uncomfortable with it. But while I'm not giving you a page range or a word count, I am telling you what you need to accomplish. And so what you need to accomplish is going to dictate how long it ends up being. Just some general notes on writing. Short paragraphs are easier to digest than long ones, so you're going to be breaking up your ideas into manageable but meaningful chunks. You are using they say, I say. There's no set number of paragraphs in any section. You'll see on the next page what sort of the different sections are. You have to do what makes sense. It has to be organized, it has to have topic sentences, transitions, they say, I say language, all of that stuff. But all of the decisions about how to set up this paper are yours as the writer. First person pronouns are not only okay, but necessary, given the required tasks. We're going to draft a works cited page early in the process, and then your final draft will include a revised works cited page. You're going to be doing this in typical MLA formatting, the heading, the header, the font, the spaces, the inches, the section titles. I'll give you a template and all that jazz. This says you're going to submit via Schoology, Turnitin, and hard copy. Obviously, hard copy is not a thing this year. So you'll just be doing it to Schoology and Turnitin.com. All right. So now here's a better idea of what this is going to look like. Remember, your goal is not necessarily to answer each of these questions like bulleted points, but I'm giving you suggestions for your thinking about what kinds of things should go in each section. So your first section is the what did you do section. Remember, you're telling the story of what you've done and what you've learned. So in this section, this is what did you do? And your goal is to introduce your work, your topic, your research. You might use source material here. But these are kind of the questions you're going to talk about in section 1. What topic did you work with? What book did you use? Here's some sort of supplemental questions you might talk about with regard to your book. Sort of what was your initial assumption, your initial background on the issue, and then how did this process show you that it's a more complex issue? This is going to sort of lead you into section 2. Section 2 is the big one. Section 2 is what did you learn? Your goal in this section is going to be to show that this is a complex issue with no easy answers or solutions. It goes beyond the polarization that we might initially assume. And so with this goal in mind, we're going to examine several factors of the issue that you learned about during your exploration. And this is the part where you're going to be using your sources. This is the meat and bones of the paper. This is why I had you brainstorm sub-issues, because those sub-issues are ones you're going to do further research on. And then you, in this section, are going to report on the book and your further research. So your guiding questions here are: what surprised you? What was interesting about your topic? What did you learn? You're going to pick a couple of different factors that you were interested in. Those are your sub-issues, which we'll work on narrowing down this week. You're going to choose to talk about parts of the issue that are unique, not the obvious ones. And this is where you're going to use your they say and I say. Your sources are going to speak to each other. You're going to have something to say about your sources. This is where you're going to be explaining what you learned and what you think about it. Don't worry, I have got very good examples for you. Before you have to do this, you're going to have a much better idea of what this looks like. Finally, you're going to wrap it up with section 3, and this is the so what. In this section, you're going to come to some conclusions about your process and about the issues that were raised in your book and your research. You might use source material in this section too. Here's a series of questions that you might use to wrap up your paper. How did the process challenge your assumptions? Why does the issue matter? Why should we care? After all of this research that you've done and all of this learning that you've made, what are you going, what are you coming to? What's it connected to? What else do you want to know? Why should we care? Those kinds of things. And that's going to be section 3. So as you can see pretty clearly, obviously your works cited is your last page, and they say I say is the point here in big letters. But what I want you to kind of get out of this is your introduction, and this is going to be several paragraphs. This is going to be your conclusion, and this might be a couple of paragraphs too. This is going to be what I am calling the informational narrative. And this is where you're going to address what you wanted to learn more about, what were the sub-issues, and what you learned about them, and what you think about that. All right, this is the meat of your paper. All right. So, I know that's a lot to take in, and it's very, very different. All right. For right now, the only thing I want you to be concerned about is making sure that you have a couple of sub-issues that were raised in your book. And I will be reaching out and talking to you this week as needed about getting those in order. Starting later this week, I will be posting another screencast about how you can start finding additional sources on those sub-issues that you decided you wanted to look at. Thanks for listening.